If you could just mark yourselves present, we can get started. We will start with an invocation by Supervisor Engelbrecht, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And the flag is in that corner over there.
We pray. God of power, might, wisdom, and justice, through you authority is written and ministered. Laws are enacted and judgment is decreed. Assist with your spirit of counsel and fortitude the supervisors gathered here tonight. May we always seek the ways of righteousness, justice, and mercy. Grant that we may be enabled by your powerful protection to lead with honesty and integrity. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call is going around. We have 20 members present, 5 excused, so we do have a quorum. You can see the reports on the agenda. That will take us... I'm sorry. Supervisor Zimmer, could you mark yourself present, please? Thank you. For our first portion of public comment, we have a presentation by the Director of Substance Use Initiatives from the Wisconsin DHS. Michelle, the floor is yours. I can.
So I won't move very far from the microphone. Got it. Right there. Got it. Okay. So I just appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this evening. My name is Michelle Hayes. I'm the Director of Substance Use Initiatives and a Policy Advisor for the Office of the Secretary with the State Department of Health in Madison. A very large portion of my job is to work with the National Prescription Opiate Litigation Funds that come in through the state of Wisconsin. So from what I understand tonight, I'm here to provide an informative session for you on what the National Prescription Opiate Litigation Settlement Funds are, and then to provide you just a very basic landscape of what they entail for counties and subdivisions that played a part in that litigation, and then also how we handle those funds at the state level. I think there's a lot of miscommunication, there's a lot of misunderstanding. Since I have been in this position and presenting across the state and nationally, the misunderstanding, please know you're not alone, that this is okay to have questions, it's okay not to have a good understanding, and that's what the purpose of these types of informative sessions are all about, so that we can continue to get the right information to the right persons in the right hands so that healthy decisions can be made, questions can be asked, and the dollars go towards their intended purpose, which is to abate the opioid epidemic itself and to really support the harms that they have caused our communities across the nation. So as we know, the health crisis that we know as the opioid epidemic has claimed hundreds of thousands of lives across the United States alone. And it continues to do so as illicit substances such as fentanyl continue to ravage our community drug supply. So to bring it more close to home, in the state of Wisconsin alone, we have lost over 10,000 lives since 2020 due to the opioid epidemic. And we know that you are losing lives here in Manitowoc County because of this issue. So it is in your community, it is in your backyard, so I appreciate that you're willing to hear and to listen and to learn about what the prescription opioid litigation is all about. So to provide some background, amid the claims that the pharmaceutical industry and distributors used misleading tactics to downplay the known harms of prescription opioids, more than 2,000 plaintiffs, such as those representing the state of Wisconsin and subdivisions such as yourselves, the local governments of Wisconsin, joined one of the largest civil trials in U.S. history in 2017, and that was the National Prescription Opiate Litigation, otherwise known as MDL Case 2804. So as of April 2024, so last year around this time, 71 counties in the state of Wisconsin, so all but one. So we have 71 counties, 16 municipalities, and the state of Wisconsin itself are defendants and recipients of settlements through this litigation. And cases have been settled with distributors, Janssen, Teva, Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and Kroger as recent as this year, and cases continue to be litigated and settled. We know that Wisconsin anticipates to receive over $780 million through settlements through 2038. That's a lot of money, and one of the most important parts of my job is to remind people that dollars only come to us because of lives that have been lost. So the dollars support services, they support persons, but the purpose behind these dollars and the litigation itself was because of the harms caused to our communities and to people who have lost their lives due to substance use disorder, opioid use disorder, and the harms to their families and loved ones. So that $780 million, what do we do with that? So in the state of Wisconsin, the state legislature has decided how those dollars will be divided out amongst our communities. And per 2021 Wisconsin Act 57, so that's an important case for you as counties to know, 2021 Wisconsin Act 57 dictates the terms on how we proceed with the National Prescription Opioid Litigation dollars. In that act, it specifically states that 30% of the opioid settlement funds that come in are the state's share, and they come to us at the Department of Health Services, and that is what my office has oversight of, and we distribute those funds into the community. The other 70% of those funds go to you, the subdivisions, the local governments who participated in that litigation, for you to distribute into your communities. So with that, similarities and differences. I think there is stigma here or misunderstanding that the state, the way that we handle the opioid litigation dollars is completely different than the way that the counties and the municipalities handle theirs. And that's not entirely true. So I'm here to kind of refute that claim tonight and provide you with some information. So you are a part of the Wisconsin Counties Association, which is a wonderful repository of information for you to look at anytime that you would like. They have a website that is the WisconsinOpioidAbatement.com and has resources and information specific to you as the counties, municipalities, local governments that participated in the litigation. So I'm going to go through some of the information in here. So, one of the very important similarities on the way that the state operates and the way that the local governments operate is that we are bound by Exhibit E of the settlement agreement on ways that we are allowed to use the opioid settlement dollars. I believe you all have a copy of Exhibit E for your reading pleasure, but this is a pretty encompassing document, and like I said, it comes directly from the MDL case itself. So both us at the state and the local governments have these documents and guides us on ways that we are allowed to use the opioid settlement dollars. They are evidence-based, they are evidence-informed, and they are encompassing across the continuum of care. So if you're familiar with substance use disorder, it is not a one-size-fits-all. There is not one treatment, there is not one practice, there is not one strategy that works for every single person who struggles with this disease. And that's why it's important for these strategies to encompass across the continuum of care, meaning prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. It includes data-driven processes. It includes justice-involved or criminal justice-involved practices as well. We recognize that there are going to be persons who are experiencing opioid use disorder in all different places in your communities, right? They may be in your jails, they may be in your treatment services, they may be in your backyard, right? They may be a neighbor of yours, they may be living in your home, family members, friends, loved ones. So that's the purpose of this document, to guide you and to provide you with the allowable uses of the opioid settlement dollars. So I work closely with the Wisconsin Department of Justice on this case, since obviously Attorney Josh Call and his team have tirelessly participated in litigation to bring these dollars into the state of Wisconsin. And I work most closely with Assistant Attorney General Laura McFarland, who wanted to be here to present tonight. Unfortunately, Manitowoc County technology does not allow her to present virtually, so she shared information with me that she would like me to provide to you on her behalf, one of which is that exhibit document that you have sitting in front of you. And she asked me to provide you with this information. So we know that there is an amount allowed for each settlement for non-approved uses. However, these must be reported on, and because you, as a local government, are already paying 20% of your allocation to your attorneys under the terms of the settlements, it's imperative that you, as subdivisions, use their funds on the approved uses noted in Exhibit E of the settlement. So your non-approved use allowance is already being used in the portion going to your attorneys. And there's also a reminder for these funds that they are to abate the opioid crisis, and funds coming in are to be used in addition to funds that are already being used. So with that is how we are very similar. State of Wisconsin, we operate in the same manner. We use this document to guide us on how we place the funds into the community, and you are required to do the same. So as far as differences go, we have reporting obligations. So we go back to 2021 Wisconsin Act 57, and AAG McFarland wanted me to reiterate for you that pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 165.12 sub 4 sub C, by May 1st annually, local governments that receive money from an opioid settlement shall submit a report to the Department of Justice and the Joint Committee on Finance that includes the amount of money in the local government segregated account as of December 31st of the previous year, and an accounting of the receipts and disbursements from the segregated account in the previous year. So, Wisconsin Counties Association maintains a Google Drive that you can look at anytime. In fact, anyone in this room can access this information because the National Prescription Opiate Litigation dollars are the community's dollars. So they are public record, and they are to be put out for public awareness. So this is a listing of all of the counties and subdivisions reports that I just spoke to in Wisconsin state statute. So Manitowoc County, whether you were aware of that or not, you submitted a report for the spend in 2023. I can show you what that report looked like. Let's go all the way down to Manitowoc County. Here's Manitowoc County's page 1 of the report. These are standard documents that are required of all Wisconsin counties, and again, they're submitted to the Joint Committee on Finance and the Department of Justice by May 1st of every year, and they're on the spend of the year before. So the dollar amounts are handwritten in here, as you see. There's requests of the dollar amount that was in the account at the end of the year. There's a section here for interest that was accrued in that segregated account. And then the second page is where you want to get specific, because it is required to give the receipts and the details of the spend of those dollars. Here's page 2 of Manitowoc County's report. So as you can see here, we have letters A through H, and letter B was the only section that was filled out for the year of 2023. So this is what was submitted on behalf of Manitowoc County. So Milwaukee County, obviously not similar in size. However, we know that in the nation, Milwaukee County has one of the highest overdose rates and are being significantly impacted by the opioid epidemic. So being it part of the state of Wisconsin, we're very interested, right? We want to pay close attention and to support Milwaukee County just the same as we would for Manitowoc County. Really, it doesn't matter. We're all in this together. Wisconsinites are Wisconsinites, so we wanted to be able to support one another. This is an example of Milwaukee County's report. So they have over 14 million that come into Milwaukee County, significantly higher amount. Their report is 55 pages long. The report got specific and went back to Exhibit E to cross-reference what portions of Exhibit E that they were using the settlement funds for, collaborative partners that they worked with, the intended outcomes, and then the projected budget for each of the spends of their settlement dollars. I wanted to provide this to you as reference, as this is an example of how detailed reports can be so that there is public transparency for reporting purposes. So, for the state of Wisconsin, our information is on the same website. The Wisconsin Counties Association actually shares all of our information on here. And we have the Opioid Settlement Fund website for the Department of Health Services. So this encompasses everything that the Wisconsin state share is being spent towards, and our reporting obligations are different from yours in Wisconsin state statute. We do not report by May 1st. We report quarterly. So every 4 months, I am putting a report forward on the spend of the state share of the dollars. And I encourage everyone to take a look because I think there's a lot of great information in here. We share this information with counties regularly. Counties reach out because they need technical assistance, they have questions, they want to know, right? What is happening? How are the state's dollars being spent? Because at the end of the day, we may be able to leverage what you don't have, maybe another county does, or the state can so help get you the access or the resources that you're looking for. So this is really about sharing information, working together, because we recognize your amount that you're getting for your county may not be enough, right, to do what you're wanting to do, to put forward the supports that you're hoping to put forward. And that's where leveraging with other counties or working with state resources could provide you with opportunities that you weren't aware of in the first place. But here's an example of the state quarterly reports that I put forward to the Joint Committee on Finance. Mine is about 31 pages long, but ultimately at the end of the day, we're being very specific, right? Because again, the dollars, we want transparency for the public. We want people to know how these dollars are being spent. We want to know how the funding opportunities are going out into the community. And then once they're out into the community, how are the organizations, the agencies using those dollars? Is it effective? Do we need to pivot? Or do we keep doing what we're doing and actually put more funds into what's already working? Really to be able to identify barriers, gaps, that sort of thing. So with that, we talked about our similarities, we talked about our differences, and our DHS reports. We have our quarterly reports on here, and then we also have a list of our fiscal year spends. So this is where the state of Wisconsin, like I said, the 30% that we spend out, it's very, very detailed, right? It's broken down by category across the continuum of care. This is something that we feel at the Department of Health Services is incredibly important. We make data-driven decisions. We look at evidence-based practices because we recognize, again, what works for someone may not work for somebody else, so we need to have all of sides of the table talking to us and letting us know what's working and what's not. As you can see, we put our funds out by state fiscal year. So the first year that we received funds at the state level, we received $31 million. The second year, we received $8 million. Fiscal year 25, we received $36 million. And this year, fiscal year 26, we anticipate to receive $14.4 million. So with that, we recognize the differences are up and down, right? And that's really how the cases settle and how some of these distributors and companies decide to pay out. So for example, Walmart decided to pay ahead last year, and that's why we saw a jump up to $36 million in the dollar amounts coming into the state of Wisconsin. But that also requires us, like you, to pivot, right? So what's happening in your community, you have to have a good understanding of what's going on, where the needs and the risks exist, and how you're planning on supporting those initiatives, regardless of the dollar amounts that are coming in. So the opioid settlement dollars are in addition to what you already have in your bank account to support these types of initiatives. So last thing I wanted to do is just kind of talk about, if I would talk about all of the initiatives that we've done at the state, believe me, I'd be here for another 5 hours. But I know I'm up on time. I just wanted to touch on a couple of initiatives where the state's share of the settlement dollars has helped support Manitowoc County. One is our naloxone Direct program. It was formerly known as Narcan Direct. So the naloxone Direct program is, we use the National Prescription Opioid Litigation dollars, and we braid those funds, we put them together with state opioid response grant dollars that come from SAMHSA. And the reason that we do that is, again, because we want to leverage. We cannot get enough Narcan into our communities, point blank, period. And because of that, we have to use two separate funding sources in order to support the need. So to do that, the Narcan Direct program uses those two funding sources. We put opportunities out into the communities across the state of Wisconsin. There are 6 buckets, so to speak, of agencies that can apply for those funds. Our opioid treatment programs, our law enforcement agencies, our health and human services department, our tribal health agencies, our community recovery community organizations, and our syringe access programs. So 6 buckets can apply for them, and they receive naloxone from the state for free to distribute into the community. Manitowoc County is a partner of our Naloxone Direct program, and I can give you some numbers from the most recent funding opportunity. The Manitowoc County Human Services Department received 24 cases of naloxone, which equates to 288 kits, 576 doses of naloxone. The Manitowoc County Health Department also applied. They received 12 cases of naloxone, which equates to 144 kits, or 288 doses. And Lighthouse Recovery also received an award of 50 cases, 600 kits, or 1,200 doses of naloxone for your community. This makes a big difference because we recognize that naloxone is not cheap, and we know that the community obviously needs it. When you have agencies requesting 50 cases, we know there's a significant need in what's happening in your community drug supply. Also, we have a room and board funding opportunity that we put out for our Medicaid recipients. So we know that residential substance use disorder treatment is expensive, and it is expensive to counties. Medicaid does not cover the cost of room and board for residential substance use disorder treatment. So that ask is being put on you as counties to cover that where it doesn't make ends meet. Manitowoc County received $68,757, and that comes from our state share of the National Prescription Opioid Litigation dollars to you for those services. At the time of the funding opportunity, the average cost, daily cost of residential substance use disorder treatment for room and board, the numbers that we were pulling were anywhere between $80 to $95 per day. And if we took the number of 80, the lowest number, this amount awarded to Manitowoc County would cover approximately 858 days of residential substance use disorder treatment, room and board. And then last, for Manitowoc County, we also had a capital project award. We recognize that we need brick and mortar structures, right? We need more buildings to house more treatment providers to get more services going so that people can get the help that they need. So one of our capital project grants went to Lighthouse Recovery here in Manitowoc. That was just under $200,000, and that was for them to expand their safe, stable housing, right? We need safe, stable housing for pregnant and postpartum women and their children to stay while those women receive services. So expanding and renovating a Lighthouse Recovery space to do that. So that's some of the examples of how the state's share of the opioid settlement dollars are coming into Manitowoc County to help support what is happening here. So with that, a lot of information in a very small amount of time, but I'm happy to take questions or clarify anything that you may want to know. Identify programs supported by 2023 expenditures, attach narrative explaining programs, and identifying the category of approved opioid remediation uses, Exhibit E, to distributor settlement agreement. And it says funds used of $250,000 for human services and supporting programs. I cannot answer that question for you. But what you can do is reach out to your local legal counsel to discuss that. If you still have questions, AAG McFarland also recommends that you can reach out to the Wisconsin Counties Association legal counsel, or she is also available at the Wisconsin Department of Justice.
According to that report that was filled out, does that have any reference to how much money the county could actually be allocated from by the state, depending on that report is filled out?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Right, this is just speaking to the spend of a year, of a calendar year. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Supervisor Ryan, please.
Is this a typical form? Typically, do you see it filled out like this, or is it filled out differently? Because I've seen, compared to Milwaukee, this looks different.
Yeah, so I can't answer that for you. I just, the Assistant Attorney General just wanted to call to your attention that this exists, that these are what are submitted to the Department of Justice and the Joint Committee on Finance, in our state legislature. So I know that this is a form that the Wisconsin Counties Association uses to pull all of your information together to submit together, but unfortunately I can't answer those questions for you. But I would probably same response to reach out to your local legal counsel, Wisconsin Counties Association legal counsel, or Wisconsin Department of Justice.
I do have one question. Maybe you're not the one to answer this, but you referenced statute 165, 112, subsection D, subsection 4, subsection B, where you talked about how we had to have an accounting of the receipts and disbursements from this account. In that section of the statute, it also says that a local government may not use monies from the segregated account to substitute for budgeted monies from other sources. Can you give me an example of what maybe that would look like?
I cannot. However, the Assistant Attorney General did, that is why she asked me to include that language that funds are to be used to abate the opioid crisis, and they're to be used in addition to funds that are already being used. And this is where she would request that you reach out to your legal counsel, Wisconsin Counties Association, or Wisconsin Department of Justice.
Could you speak a little more about the allocation of our non-mandated funds, about the attorney fees?
That I cannot answer for you.
Could you just repeat what you said in the presentation?
Yep, so you are paying 20% of your allocation to your attorneys, and under the terms of the settlements, it's imperative that you as subdivisions use the funds as funds on the approved uses noted in Exhibit E of the settlement.
Can you elaborate anything more?
I cannot. That would be a question for your local legal counsel.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Hayes? Yes, Supervisor Metzger.
I do have one. I was told that there's, in some other states, not a county, that they were building, like a pilot house or something. How is that going? Do you know anything like that?
Do you know what county you would be referring to?
I'm not sure, but I think there's only one in the state of Wisconsin.
What type of service? I'm not quite sure. I just, so building a facility, I can speak to the capital grants that we have allocated. A Meta House in Milwaukee, Arbor Place in Menominee, and then Lighthouse here in Manitowoc. And then we've also just recently, as this year, allocated funds or awarded funds to Apricity, and then the United Community Center in Milwaukee. And it's, okay. Sure, yeah. And then as far as releasing into the community, we also support the Department of Corrections they have persons who are releasing to the community who have opioid use disorder. They may be started on medication or they need an assessment. They need safe, stable housing. They may go to a residential service provider, and then those funds can be used to provide assessment and connect them with medications for opioid use disorder once they are out into the community.
Do you think that those would be in other counties then?
Yeah, absolutely. So residential services providers exist across the state of Wisconsin, as do the providers who provide medications for opioid use disorder. Some of them you may be familiar with are called opioid treatment programs. They provide all three forms of FDA-approved medications to treat opioid use disorder. Manitowoc County does not have one. One of the closest ones is in Sheboygan, but they do have mobile units that can come to Manitowoc County to provide service if that would contractually occur. So we're always looking to expand. We recognize that getting somebody the help that they need in a timely manner is incredibly important when it comes to substance use and substance use treatment. And with time being of the essence, being very rural, we have a lot of communities across Wisconsin that are incredibly rural where people don't have transportation, they lack access. We were looking at the most creative ways to get them the services they need in the time that they need it. So yeah, mobile units are definitely one of those, and those residential service providers, they do exist. Like one would be, for example, Lutheran Social Services has those types of services across the state. You're welcome. All right, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, that will take us into our public comment. So we ask that when you come to speak for public comment that you state your name and your address clearly for the record. We also ask that you abide by the 3-minute time limit. You don't have to speak for all 3 minutes, but if you'd like to say something, because there's so many of us here tonight, I want to make sure that everybody is respectful of each other's time and that we have the opportunity to hear everybody speak. So with that, I'd be looking for anybody who'd like to speak for public comment. Yes, sir? Please join us up at the podium.
Good evening. My name is Mark Rohr. The address is 1010 South 8th Street, Manitowoc. I'm currently a circuit judge in Manitowoc County, Wisconsin. I've held the position for 12 years. Prior to that, I was the district attorney for 10 years. I was the first drug court judge in Manitowoc County. I'm currently the chairperson of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. We do not need an opiate task force. The reason why is we don't need someone to tell us the obvious. We have an opiate problem in Manitowoc County, Wisconsin. Also, Manitowoc County has something in place to address the opiate problem. It's called the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. The Criminal Justice Coordinating Council deals with issues in the criminal justice system. Members include representatives from the county board, law enforcement, judiciary, DA's office, public defender's office, private bar, human services, probation and parole, and citizens. As a founding member and current chairperson for the CJCC, no one has ever come to raise concerns how money is being spent in treating the opiate problem. We've been given authority by the county board to make recommendations to this board as far as how taxpayer money can be spent. Such is the case when we recommended the drug court. Treating addiction costs money. Costs primarily are used for counseling and sober housing. From experience, you cannot have one without the other. Not treating addiction is much more expensive. Addiction casts a wide net of costs upon the community. Incarcerating people conservatively costs $40,000 a year. Families go on public assistance when a loved one is incarcerated. Babies are born addicted. NIC unit costs sometimes can cost $100,000 for addicted babies. Children in foster care go right hand in hand at $18,000 a year. People's homes are burglarized, people are robbed. Small businesses are being stolen from. The results are, of course, higher costs to citizens and higher insurance rates. I've often said a 10% success rate in drug court and treatment clearly covers all the costs that would be associated with it when you look at the cost savings on both a federal, state, and local level. Manitowoc County's success rate is much higher than 10%. With treatment in drug court, we now have successful people who are formerly addicts being productive citizens, raising their children, and giving back to the community. I'm honored to speak before you tonight, and if you have any questions, please feel free to talk to me at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? Yes, Judge Duane.
My name is Bob Duane. I'm the circuit judge for Branch 3, 1010 South 8th Street in Manitowoc. My position on the opioid task force is too many cooks spoiled soup. It's not a question. I don't think anybody's questioning whether what Manitowoc is doing is working, and I understand they have task forces in other counties. Other counties are trying to catch up to us. We have services in place. Those services are working. Those services cost money. There was reference made to, different grants that are available. One of the key ones is the SOAR grant. It covers a lot of the expense associated with sober living. Sober living is what gives most of the people their first foothold in a successful recovery. Our grant was cut by about 40%. So that needs to be made up in order for our sober living places to stay open. It's not a matter of are we using the money for the intended purpose. We're using the money for the intended purpose. We need the money for the intended purpose. We have to make up this difference somehow. And when I said at the Human Services Board of Directors meeting that this is sort of the litmus test for me in terms of when I have board members tell me that we believe in drug court, we like drug court, we think drug court is successful, and when the grant stops and the county has to pick up the slack, we're going to be ready to do it. This is sort of the equivalent of that. This is the first chance where that's happening. The grant has been cut for sober living. If the county is serious about keeping things going, we need that money to keep sober living operational. If we lose sober living, people go back to staying at one flop house after the next. They don't have a place where they can stay clean. They don't have a place where they can get sober. Just a couple quick figures in terms of how things are going. We started drug court in 2017, and this is just case filings. I talked about this at the Board of Directors meeting. This is not arrests. I'm not talking about arrests. I'm talking about actual criminal case filings in court. For misdemeanors, we went from a high of 831 in 2019 to 492 this past year. For felonies, we went from a high of 1,015 in 2021 to 831 in 2024. What we're doing is working. We're not solely responsible for that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that drug court and recovery is solely responsible for the drop, but what we're doing is working. We need help to keep it going. The county executive is proposing using this money for that purpose. It fits under Exhibit E. I'm asking you to say no to the task force and to let that money go where it needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Carrie Rito. My address is 1625 26th Street, Two Rivers. I'd like to say good evening to everyone. I currently serve as an administrator and case manager at Lotus Recovery Homes, where I've worked for the last 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was employed at the health department as a RN and public health nurse for 38 years. In 2011, I noticed a drastic increase in the effects of addiction on our community. At that time, we had 0 resources available to assist those suffering from this disease. And the ripple effect on our community, with the judges has talked about already, was amazing. Very, very sad. It took time, but our community did come together, creating vital programs and services that do cover the continuum of care for this addiction. And we became a model across the state, people coming to look at our programming and our partnership. We have built a beautiful puzzle in Manitowoc County where each piece plays a crucial role in supporting recovery. These pieces include Human Services, Drug Court, Core Treatment Center, Manitowoc County Health Department, Lighthouse Recovery Community Center, recovery homes, businesses employing people in recovery, housing, law enforcement, the jail, children's services, and many others, including Healthiest Manitowoc, which works on prevention and harm reduction. These partnerships have given individuals the opportunity to reclaim their lives, families, and futures. Cutting funding, which has happened to us already, like the judge just mentioned, are essential parts of this puzzle, and this would progress to a high risk. The success of our recovery programs is evident, not just in the lives they save, but in the economic and social benefits that they bring. Research continues to show in investing in recovery reduces healthcare costs, lowers crime rate, and increases productivity. Our county has been recognized for the effectiveness of our model, and we should take pride in this success. I wanted to mention that we as partners meet regularly, including Human Services. And it was brought up by somebody here about receipts and things. We, as a recovery home, do an audit every year that is mandatory for the Human Services. And it costs us, out of that funding, $12,000 a year. So I'm telling you, it's a lot of hard work, and consequences come for that. Just have one more thing. Hope should never be a privilege. It should be a promise. By continuing to invest in our recovery programs, we affirm our commitment to a future where healing is possible for all. Let's not dismantle this puzzle that we've worked so hard to put together, and it's working. Let's ensure that those fighting for a second chance receive support, resources, and dignity they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening, board members, other officials, and members of the public. My name is Anthony Lambrecht. Address is 1010 South 8th Street. I'm a former police officer, public defender, prosecutor, and now Circuit Court Judge for Manitowoc County Branch 4. My colleague, Judge Geraldine Dietz, could not be here tonight, but I've been asked to read the statement and for the board to know that all 4 Manitowoc Circuit Court judges are united behind the effort to oppose this task force. The opioid epidemic has wrought devastation across the nation. This community is no different. How to address it and combat it is a multi-million-dollar question. Much time and research has gone into figuring out what works, and Manitowoc County should be extremely proud of the efforts in place here. The CJCC, Drug Court, and most of all, the providers through the Department of Human Services have established evidence-based treatment programs that actually work, supported by sober living options. The problem is that demand exceeds capacity always. We don't need to figure out what to do or how to do it. We need to figure out how to get the treatment to as many people as both need and want it in light of always scarce resources. It makes no logical sense to take resources from the agency that is years into the fight with demonstrable and measurable results and instead use those resources to reinvent the wheel. Finally, while community involvement is always a positive, we already have an oversight board with a diverse makeup in the form of the CJCC. I urge this board to reject calls to create yet another at the risk of undermining the effective programs already in place. Thank you.
You? Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Christy Havel, and I live at 1641 Johnston Street in Manitowoc. Good evening. I am proud to share that I have almost 5 years in recovery. My journey has been long and difficult, but it was also life-changing. Thanks to the vital support I received at Human Services. I began using drugs as a teenager, starting with ecstasy and alcohol. By my 20s, I had moved on to painkillers and Xanax. And throughout my 20s, I moved on to fentanyl and meth. My addiction led me down a path of destruction. I made choices that devastated my life. I had 2 children in abusive relationships, both who have ended up in foster care. I caught multiple charges, becoming homeless, and eventually reached a point where I no longer wanted to live. I had tried many pathways to recovery, but no matter how hard I tried, I would relapse. The cravings consumed me, and recovery felt out of reach. When I entered the drug court program, I didn't know what to expect, and unfortunately I relapsed and I lied, and I was terminated from the program. However, even during that brief time, I learned crucial tools, how to cope, how to shift my thoughts, and that setting and obtaining goals was possible for me. After being terminated, I was fortunate that Human Service intervened and gave me another chance. They provided the support I desperately needed, sending me back to treatment. After my release from jail, I entered CORE, and I completed about 80 days of treatment followed by sober living. When I began working, my debts weighed heavily on me. At first, it felt impossible to get ahead, but I could focus on my recovery, and I had access to the wraparound services. I was able to set up a payment plan and gradually work my way out of debt. After treatment with Human Services, I have been able to reunite with my children, build lifelong connections, find and maintain an apartment. I give back and continue to give back through volunteer work, and I completed probation, earned my GED, started working, completed recovery coach training, became a certified peer support specialist, got my license, got a new car, and I started college. Today, I work as a peer support specialist, helping others on their recovery find their unique recovery paths, just as I found mine. I've learned that no 2 paths of recovery are the same, but for me and many others, the foundation was the wraparound services provided by Human Services. Now I attend Marian University, a full-time student pursuing a double major in social work and psychology. My children are home with me, and together we are healing from the trauma my addiction caused. We've built a happy, healthy home, and I am grateful every day for the opportunity to repair and rebuild my life. The services funded by Human Services are not just programs, they are lifelines. They give me and countless others a chance to recover, to be rebuild, and thrive. Without them, I would not be standing here today. Thank you for this time and for considering the profound impact your decisions have on individuals, families, and this community.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hoppel. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Yes.
My name is Jason Latva, 818 State Street, Executive Director of Lighthouse Recovery Community Center. When I initially arrived in Manitowoc in 2017, people with substance use disorder were seen as, at best, a hindrance, at worst, a complete throwaway segment of society that was better off in a cellar or coffin. This community has come a long way in the past 8 years. I came to the community to help develop the drug court program, the continuum of care that is still used here today, and multiple communities have attempted to replicate. Chairman Martell was gracious enough to meet with me in person for a couple hours and explain his vision of the task force, and I've also read the resolution. When you want to know why a structure is designed a certain way, you ask the architect. In 2017, I was one of the architects of the system that we use here today. For reference as to my qualifications, I have a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, an MBA. I'm a licensed professional counselor, clinical substance abuse counselor, and independent clinical supervisor. I'm also a person in live recovery. I've worked in multiple programs in the field since 2012. I am an expert in what we do here. The design was based off a combination of multiple systems of care, professional knowledge, personal experience, and endless hours of research. Every step in the system is intentional and purposeful. In the past 8 years, the foundation of this system has not changed. It has only been enhanced and made better. The development of an opioid task force would have been far more valuable 10 years ago when the community had nothing in place to address the issue. Today, it equates to adding an additional level of government where it's just not needed. If your desire is to help, you don't need to join a task force. You can call an organization that lost county funding for this year, like Lighthouse or Lotus, and offer your time, talent, or treasure. We could definitely use it now more than ever. Because someone has watched every episode of the TV show Intervention does not qualify them to advise on a system of care where funds should be directed. Directing where these funds are spent belongs in the hands of people that have a strong understanding of the system we have here. That person is already in place. Her name is Lori Fury, and she's Director of Human Services. I know she has a strong knowledge of the system because she was my direct supervisor when it was being developed and has been involved from the beginning. She's also a social worker, so not only does she understand how it works, she understands why it works. There's also a Human Services Board in place to provide oversight and advise the county board. Community members are allowed to attend the meetings and are given an arena to share ideas they may have. This role, the Human Services Board, sounds incredibly similar to the role of the task force. Duplication of roles is not only inefficient, also wasteful. For the reasons I have stated, I'm against the formation of the Opioid Task Force as it is not needed. We have a highly functioning system of care in place. We have an individual in place that is incredibly competent in knowing and understanding how and where to direct the funds to keep this system working at the level it needs to continue to achieve positive outcomes. What is needed is additional funding for sober living and recovery coaching. If that piece of the system is gone, this system fails. That's not conjecture, that's fact. Thank you.
All right, is there anybody else wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Andrea Everett. I live at 2018 Monroe Street, Two Rivers. Thank you for having me. My name is Andrea, and I am in long-term recovery. On February 5th, 2025, I celebrated 6 years of recovery from my drug of choices, heroin and meth. I wouldn't be the person I am today without my first year in recovery, which ultimately set a strong foundation for my success these past 6 years. I am forever grateful for the drug court program, human services, and Lighthouse Recovery Community Center, because without them, I would not be standing in front of you today. 6 years ago, I was broken. I couldn't imagine going even 1 hour without drugs to numb the pain and avoid facing the hurt I had buried deep inside. I blamed everyone else for my situation, and I couldn't admit to myself that the drugs were stronger than I was. The fast life was all I knew, even if it meant losing my children. I was a menace. My neighbors were afraid to be outside because of me. I was destroying myself, and in turn, I was destroying the community. I was racking up drug charges, and my house was being raided by the police multiple times. I was surrounded by people who only brought me down. I was surviving, but I wasn't truly living. I convinced myself that I would be okay in prison, that I was destined to spend my life behind bars because I just couldn't give up the urge to get high. I had no coping skills, no boundaries, and no way to process the trauma I had experienced. Getting high was my life. Eventually, I had to face my consequences, and I served 11 and a half months in the county jail. But the moment that I was released, I returned back to using. I went back to my old friends and the same hangout spots because that's all I knew. Jail wasn't the change I needed. It was just a holding space. It wasn't until 4/20/2018, when I lost my 7-year-old son, that I truly realized the depth of my struggles. My children were still in foster care, but even that wasn't enough to make me stop using. I fought probation to send me to prison instead of going to treatment because I couldn't imagine a life without drugs. I wasn't safe enough to be in basic outpatient programming, so I went to ARC residential program. I left twice and relapsed each time. What I was missing was a community support. I could get clean for a few months, but I didn't know how to live clean in the real world. That's when drug court and human services stepped in. February 19th, I pled into drug court fully intending to fail, but my probation officer and the drug court team had faith in me even when I didn't have faith in myself. Drug court was a life-changing experience. It gave me the tools I needed to live in the community with the right amount of structure. Court appearances gave me accountability, and I progressed in the program, and I became prouder to stand before the judge each week. My team of providers helped me process my grief and trauma. I began to love myself again. Once I started to love myself, I started to thrive. Having people who genuinely cared about me, who showed up for me when I couldn't show up for myself, taught me that I was worth it. Those providers are still part of my life today. I know I can lean on them anytime I need support. Human services played a crucial role in helping me become a healthy mother again. They provided me with the programs and services I needed to succeed long term. Today I have custody of all my children, and human services has been there every step of the way, attending my drug court appearances and celebrating my graduation with me. Drug court allowed me to stay in sober living, where I learned how to become independent again. Lighthouse Recovery Community Center was a safe place to go, pro-social activities to engage in, and I started to build a community that I desperately needed. I cannot stress enough that these resources that we now have in our community were vital to my recovery and healing journey. Today I'm looking at buying my first home, something that I never thought would be possible without the structure and guidance that I received from drug court. Sure. I am now a peer support specialist helping others in the community who face substance use and mental health challenges. I also serve as a direct supervisor in Manitowoc and Madison, supporting other coaches to help the population in our community. I just want to say that these resources were very vital to my recovery, and I would not be standing in front of you today. Thank you.
All right, is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Neep, 532 North 10th Street, Manitowoc. The only reason any of you in this board would know my name is either because I went to high school with you or because you read it in the Herald Times Reporter. I've been arrested in Manitowoc over 50 times and sent to prison 5 times. I have currently not been arrested for 4 years. In the past, I wasn't able to make it 2 months without getting arrested, right? All I knew was drugs, drinking, and crime. I haven't been arrested in 4 years because of the system that is already in place in Manitowoc County. Drug court, I'm a drug court graduate. Sober living was essential to my recovery. The Human Services Department supported me every step of the way, and they continue to do so today. It wasn't easy, but without that process in place, it would have been way harder for me. I was able to reconnect with my children. I have full custody of my youngest son. And it's not just treatment or sober living or recovery centers or mental health providers and groups that make the process work. It's a combination of all of it working together. The way it already does here, right? Fixing something that's not broken is stupid to me, right? I've never in my life been able to hold a job for over 6 months. Today, I have 2 jobs that I've been at for over 2 years. Changing a system that saved countless lives in the last 8 years would kind of be insulting to the county, when there's already a solution in place. The 2 ladies you heard speak earlier, Andrea and Christy, continue to move forward helping other people in recovery also, right? We don't just keep it for ourselves and leave it. That's not it, We keep going forward and helping others in the same situation, right? I could be up here mad because my jobs today, right? I work in 2 sober livings, right? I have leadership positions at Lotus and Lighthouse Recovery Center. I could be up here mad because Lori Fury cut our funding, right? But I'm not mad at her because I know she doesn't want to, right? She's going to figure something out. She's going to make stuff work. I know that she cares about people and she's gotten so much stuff done for us, right? Without her, I don't think my life would be anywhere near what it is. And I have a very good working relationship with her today. All in all, I'm against the opioid task force. Like people have said it before, 8 years ago, this would have been a great thing, right? We didn't have nothing here, right? I'd get 2 underage drinkings in a week and they'd tell me to stop drinking and throw me back on the street, right? To get out of prison, I had nowhere to go. Today, all that stuff is in place to better help people better their lives. And we didn't have that 8 years ago. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Dina Grundle. My address is 13507 State Road 67, Kiel, Wisconsin. I'm a medical forensic nurse that works in 12 different counties in the state of Wisconsin. I span from Kenosha County to Manitowoc County. I would like to discuss a program called Drug Endangered Children, or DEC. Of the programs I oversee, Manitowoc County has the strongest and robust program out of all 12 counties and has been since it began. Last year, we saw 44 different children from Manitowoc County, of which we saw a 34% positive rate of drug endangerment. So these children were positive for some type of drugs that shouldn't be in their system. That's the highest rate that I have of all the counties I work in. Overall, we saw 83 patients in our program at where I work. And the rate of positive, or the rate of patients that we see related to sexual assault, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and child abuse, 83 patients we saw all year. 44 of them were children related to drug endangerment. Of those 44 children that we saw, only 2 of them, and I don't want to diminish the 2, but the only 2 of them had signs and symptoms of some type of abuse where we could look at them and be concerned. So the rest of the patients that we saw had no visible injuries or things that we would have been identified had it not been for CPS and law enforcement in our community related to this program. Without this program, these kids are at risk and would never have been identified. This is not a Monday through Friday program. Just this past year, we had a child on Christmas Day. This past Sunday, we had 6 children brought into our site. I cannot stress this enough, of the strength of the partnership between healthcare, law enforcement, and CPS that I do not see in any other county that I serve. This is not something that's broken. It does not need fixing. It is thriving. Kudos to Manitowoc County, CPS, and law enforcement and the other agencies who partner in this program to help provide safety and well-being to the children in our community. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Kyer, and I am at 10 River Park Plaza in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I'm going to switch topics for a little bit. My name is Andrea Kyer, and I'm on the Government Affairs team for Comcast Midwest region, which includes the longtime footprint here in Manitowoc. And I'm here tonight to discuss Comcast's intentions to participate in the BEAD program and ask for a letter of endorsement from the county. I think you all got a packet on your table tonight. Your school districts and communities like Schleswig and Rockland have already provided us letters of endorsement, and we're aware that the county has already given an endorsement for a BEAD application. But I wanted to stress that not only can counties endorse more than one application, but the Wisconsin Office of Broadband has set up a competitive system which they expect more than one endorsed provider will apply as a competition encourages best applications and the best use of BEAD funds. Comcast proposes to project to deliver gigabyte symmetrical speeds to nearly 2,000 homes and businesses, including Newton, Maple Grove, Rockland, Schleswig, Cooperstown, and others. In addition, if awarded, Comcast will be able to expand its network to an additional 1,500 homes in the area. We offer a network in the community, and we provide ourselves a network superiority. We have a 99.99% reliable score because we have a network that is monitored 24/7, 365 days a year, which allows us to detect program problems and fix them before some of the consumers are even aware about it. We proactively monitor network usage and double our network capacity every 2.5 years to stay ahead of growing demands. And we've invested over $17 million so far in Wisconsin's fiber network alone. What sets us apart, though, is our investment in your residents, and they can experience our product and services. The average American home has 17 Wi-Fi devices in their home. That's why we invest in our in-home technology and offer Wi-Fi devices for our customers at home, along with 1,600 hotspots throughout Wisconsin. So if you're driving in your car or traveling and you're an Xfinity customer, you can connect for free to any of our Wi-Fi hotspots. We will continue our strong commitment to Manitowoc community. We've been a valued partner of the Boys and Girls Clubs here in providing $20,000 in donations and for their STEM and programming. We also bring our Internet Essentials program to the footprint to provide high-speed internet to income-qualifying households. Currently, we have 5,000 families. These efforts illustrate our dedication to the community, along with our store in Manitowoc. In conclusion, our proposal to build fiber represents a significant step forward in delivering technology to your residents. We kindly ask for your endorsement this evening, which does not mean exclusively picking one provider over the other. It means telling the Office of Broadband that if our proposal is competitive according to the scoring criteria, that the county would support this decision and work with us to make the project a success. Thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? Any other members of the public wishing to speak? For a third and final time, are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, I will close public input. Anything from the consent agenda? Last call. If not, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Supervisor Engelbrecht, second by Supervisor Mink. No discussion on the consent agenda. The clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the consent agenda.
And the consent agenda is approved. That will take us to our committee reports. First up is the Aging and Disability Board. Supervisor Shimalunas, did you still want me to provide the report, or I see you've made it in time? I have the report. Okay. So the ADRC report is that Kim Novak, the Business Services Manager, is retiring February 28th of this year. Her replacement, LaShawn Crane, was introduced at the meeting. There's a need for volunteers to do home delivery meals in the city of Manitowoc, especially on Mondays and Fridays. The Manitowoc ADRC received a donation of $11,400 from Veteran Services to be used for out-of-county rides provided to veterans. The next meeting of the ADRC is March 28th at 10 a.m. in Manitowoc. Next up would be Board of Health, Supervisor Metzger.
Hospitalizations 11. Respiratory illness activity is very high, influenza very high and increasing, RSV activity high and stable, COVID-19 activity is low and decreasing. Health promotion, Manitowoc County School District is district is in their initiatives relating to efforts to a drug-free community grant, and they're in the beginning stage of that. Environmental health, license programming, the state fees to administer the program is set to escalate by 1% for the next 3 years. WIC report caseload for 2025 is 1,061 participants. December caseload was 1,116, and January is 1,145. Our next meeting will be March 13th. That is the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Metzger. Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, Supervisor Palkowski. Supervisor Mink.
All right, yes, we met on February 5th. Clinswick reported on the drug court for 2024. There were a total of 13 graduations and 3 terminations. The average participant is 32 years old. There are currently 12 participants. Also, thank Judge Rohr, sorry if I'm butchering that name there, for the cooking program. Also, I'd like to add to this, about once a year, I go to a drug court meeting. I have to take off work to go. I highly recommend you go. It's a great community. It's probably the most upbeat moment you're going to have in a courtroom. So I just want to kind of add that. In Attorney Larson absence, Attorney John Bilka reported regarding the Access to Court Committee, discussed rumors regarding possible immigration arrest at court, and the information learned by Judge Gerald Dietz. The committee will continue to reach out to the responsible parties regarding signage requested in the past. Finally, we got Emma, I'm going to screw this name up here, Wince, reported on the Division Deflection Program. She is taking on another role in addition to her role as community navigator. I do have a brochure here. I can send it, email it to anyone that needs it. I also have some more information on it. New copies provided. There's a total of 9 referrals and have been received with 5 closed out. Youth justice social workers will be working with the coroner as well. A little bit more on that. The program is a youth program for minors who are low risk to others and would benefit from mental health services. The goals of the program would preserve limited court resources, reduce case loads, minimize the number of youth entering the formal youth justice system, and produce positive outcomes. Our next meeting is going to be March 5th, 2025, and that's all I got.
Thank you. Next up is the Executive Committee. So the Executive Committee met, was that last week or 2 weeks ago? Last week. Time flies. We met and we discussed the ordinance that's on the agenda for tonight, repealing and creating Manitowoc County Code 4.05 regarding the budget process. We also talked about the second resolution creating a Manitowoc County Opioid Task Force. So we'll take up the ordinance first. I'd be looking for a motion to approve that. So moved by by Supervisor Benke. Looking for a second. Second by Supervisor Weiss. Any discussion on that motion? Supervisor Bry.
I apologize for that, but all right. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak here this evening. I certainly understand the intent of this ordinance, and for the most part, I'm in favor of 99% of it. It's the 1% that I'm not in favor of, and I'm going to make an amendment, or hopefully a successful amendment here shortly. It's the subsection G, which any amendment proposed by a supervisor shall be presented to the appropriate oversight committee. If either the Oversight Committee or the Finance Committee does not adopt the proposed amendment, the supervisor may present the amendment to the full county board when the county board deliberates on the annual budget. Unless authorized by 2/3 vote of the county board, an amendment proposed by a supervisor must be presented to the Finance Director and Corporation Counsel at least 48 hours before the meeting at which the amendment will be considered. And I understand the spirit of that too, because at our budget hearing that night, we had some amendments here that needed some financial assistance and some discussion. But I still believe the ability of a supervisor to make amendments on the spur of the moment, for lack of a better term, is the ability that we are elected for by the citizens of Manitowoc County. So with that, I'm going to make a proposed amendment to 4.05 budget development adoption and amendments. My amendment will be to eliminate section 4G and replace it with G. Any amendment proposed by a supervisor can be presented to the appropriate oversight committee. If either the oversight committee or the finance committee does not adopt the proposed amendment, the supervisor may present the amendment to the full county board when the county board deliberates on the annual budget. So that is my amendment.
There's a motion. Is that a second? Second by Supervisor Ryan Phipps. Any discussion on the motion?
I guess just to continue, like I said, I started off. I believe there's a possibility that we created this ordinance, and it's good. I just believe that the ability for anybody to speak on any given night without making amendments should be absolute. I do encourage, though, because with my amendment will not require to do a financial analysis or even another analysis, but I do encourage that if there's after the budget is passed by the Finance Committee or recommended for passage to the county board, if there are concerns, either talk to the Finance Director, talk to the Corporation Counsel, talk to the County Board Chairman, talk to the Finance Committee Chairman, talk to anybody regarding that. But if you do have some questions or you do have some proposed amendments, start the process right away. I mean, because to get those numbers ahead of time, I'm sure JJ will be fine. To sit down and with Peter to talk about procedure or the chairman as well, I think it'll be fine. You'll have some time there, but we still should have that ability to do it the night of the county board budget process meeting. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? Any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the clerk will reread the amendment and conduct the vote.
So supervisors will be voting on a motion to amend Ordinance 71, repealing and recreating Manitowoc County Code Section 4.05, Budget Development, Adoption, and Amendment by deleting subsection G and replace it with any amendment proposed by a supervisor may be presented to the appropriate oversight committee. If either the Oversight Committee or the Finance Committee does not adopt the proposed amendment, the supervisor may present the amendment to the full county board when the county board deliberates on the annual budget.
And the amendment is approved 20-1 with 4 abstaining. So now the amendment becomes part of the original ordinance. And I just want to give a little background on the ordinance too. So I proposed this ordinance after reflecting back on our budget process. And I found that in the county code currently, there really isn't a defined process. It basically says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that after receiving the budget, the county board will deliberate on the budget. And I thought it was important, considering some of the challenges that we had faced with the Human Services Department and our growing needs in the budget altogether, with the passage of the 0.5% sales tax being included in the budget, that it was really important that the county board used our committee structure to provide the oversight that's necessary to make sure that the budget is up to snuff in what we're looking to accomplish. And so primarily this budget ordinance is to set up that structure and the expectation that committees will meet with their department heads to go over the budgets that were requested, as opposed to what was proposed by the county executive, and it gives the committees an opportunity to discuss potential changes in the budget, maybe unmet needs, propose new ideas in an orderly process, because I think we're all interested in avoiding maybe some of the challenges that we faced at our budget meeting, where we were proposing amendments and they hadn't necessarily gone through the proper vetting of the committee structure. And so that's what this ordinance does. Supervisor Falkowski.
Doesn't work.
There's a delay.
I gotta wiggle. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, because during the executive committee, we discussed training, which seems to be really prominent about having an effective way of conducting our budget meetings. Has that ever been declared as far as when and how and what the criteria is for new supervisors being trained and maybe briefed on how the process works for streamlining?
I don't think that discussion has occurred formally, but the Corporation Council and I have agreed that that is something that we will work on for onboarding for new supervisors. We also pay our dues to Wisconsin Counties Association, and they offer training, and I know you and I have both talked to some of the trainers through WCA and possibly invite them to speak. So that way, some of these, there's not so much of a learning curve. There's a learning curve to becoming an elected official, a county supervisor, and so I think that is important, and we'd like to improve that onboarding process and provide regular training.
So it's on track for the upcoming budget discussion. We're trying to lock down a time where supervisors can be trained.
Yeah, that
all right.
Be the goal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the ordinance? No, do we need a new motion second with the amended? No, the amendment's part of the original ordinance. Thank you. Okay, seeing no further discussion, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the Ordinance 71 repealing and recreating Manitowoc County Code Section 4.05, Budget Development, Adoption, and Amendment as amended.
All right, and the ordinance is approved 20-1 with 4 abstentions. 4 absent, I'm sorry, not abstentions. All right, that will take us to the resolution creating the Manitowoc County Opioid Task Force. I'd be looking for a motion to approve. Supervisor Falkowski? There's a small delay.
What do I do?
There's just a small delay. Now you can speak.
It's going to be awkward. I make a motion to table the opioid settlement, or the opioid task force. That is my intent, is to make a motion to table the opioid task force resolution.
Okay. All right, there's a motion to table. Supervisor. We do need that. One moment, we just need to check the rules. It hasn't been on the floor yet. discussion. Okay. All right, Supervisor Falkowski, we're running into some challenges with Robert's rules here. Since the motion has not been made to approve the resolution, a motion
I can't table
a
it.
motion to table would be out of order. We would need to have the resolution would need to be on the floor first before it can be tabled. Okay. All right. So they'd be looking for a motion to approve. I'm going to make the motion to approve. So I'd be looking for a second. Supervisor Ryan Phipps. And then I will speak to my motion. And then I will go to Supervisor Falkowski. So this is my proposal, so I just wanted to have the opportunity to discuss it before it would potentially be tabled. I just want to be perfectly clear that the creation of an opioid task force, when I propose this, the intention is not to interfere with the work that has been done in the community by the great community partners and resources that we have in Manitowoc County. My sole focus has been on the opioid settlement money that the county was awarded and ensuring that that is used appropriately. Because let's be clear, the people of Manitowoc County are victims in this lawsuit. That's why we were awarded the settlement money. We have to pay more for law enforcement. Our jail is filling up. We've had to add a 4th branch to our county circuit courts due to an increase in crime. We've had to pay nearly 70% more for human services in the past decade. All around the country, in the public and private sector, we're feeling the effects of a nationwide opioid crisis. The individuals who have become addicted to opioids and those who love them have had their lives ripped apart by the scourge of unfettered opioids in our county. This is a crisis, but it is not unsolvable. In 2023, Manitowoc County appropriated $250,000 to the Human Services Department. In 2024, $300,000 was allocated. In the face of the Human Services financial challenges, early last year, in the 2025 budget, we called for a total of $600,000 from the opioid settlement to be spent. $500,000 in Human Services and $100,000 to supplant expenses in the Metro Drug Unit. Without a plan going forward, this is not sustainable. I propose the task force for 3 reasons. 1, to create a strategy surrounding these dollars and make recommendations to the county executive and to the county board for how these funds can be best utilized. 2, to provide oversight to ensure that the funds are being appropriately spent in accordance with the qualifying uses that we were shown tonight. 3, to provide a space to educate the public and county leaders about the impacts of the opioid crisis and to have a conversation about what we can do to support the work that's already being done by our citizens and community organizations. When I first began exploring the need for this task force, I reached out to 3 department heads that I thought were the most likely recipients of opioid settlement dollars: Public Health, the Sheriff's Department, and the Human Services Department. Neither Public Health nor the Sheriff's Department had been consulted. When we have a community-wide challenge that is impacting multiple departments within our county, it's a mistake not to bring those leaders to the table. My proposal calls for the inclusion of representatives from all 3 of these departments because they also have unmet and unheard needs. In the months since I proposed the task force, I've also met with over a dozen leaders representing various nonprofit community resources that we have, who are working every day to address opioid addiction, provide treatment, and expand prevention and harm reduction services. I'm also proposing that we include these voices with lived experience to help us make educated decisions. This is not just a county government problem. This is a community problem, and we should have all voices at the table. These people are here tonight because they have a perspective to offer that we are missing when we decide how to spend these opioid settlement dollars, not because they're looking for a taxpayer handout. I know there is mistrust from many in the recovery community with my proposal. Your local government has not done a good job of listening to you in the past. I take my share of the responsibility having been on this board for 5 years. But more importantly, I'm taking responsibility for changing the conversation at the county level moving forward. The second reason I'm proposing this task force is because it is the county board's responsibility to provide oversight in ensuring that these funds are appropriately used. In various meetings, I've asked both the Human Services Director and the county executive what the opioid settlement funds have been spent on. I've received conflicting responses, and if you've been at those meetings with me, you've heard those conflicting responses too. On sober living, on Narcan, which we heard we received from DHS, on foster care, on CCS, which by the way is a fully funded federal program, on making up human services deficits. It's fungible. A few weeks ago, when I asked the Human Services Director and the county executive for documentation to show exactly where the money has gone, I was not provided with anything. You all received an email last Thursday that states I was incorrect in saying this, but to this date, I have received zero evidence that shows where the $550,000 of opioid settlement money appropriated in 2023 and 2024 went. It also just so happens that 2023 and 2024 were the budgets we experienced errors and deficits in the Human Services Department that required us to take the drastic action of passing and implementing a sales tax for the first time in Manitowoc County's history. State law requires that Manitowoc County keep an accounting of the receipts and disbursements from a segregated opioid settlement account. If this documentation exists, why can't we see it? If it doesn't exist, why not? Here you saw the report that Ms. Hayes showed you that was submitted to the Wisconsin Counties Association, because that was the only documentation I could find. $250,000 to support programs. But what are we doing to identify and describe any positions being created? No answer. Identify capital initiatives being supported by this funding? No answer. Identify third-party initiatives being supported by this funding? No answer. Identify initiatives that are being considered for future expenditures? No answer. Identify 2023 funding that supplements amounts received through other sources? No answer. And my favorite, describe successes and challenges faced in 2023 in combating the opioid epidemic? No answer. I looked through these reports provided by other counties. Each county submitted the report. I could not find a single other county that wrote a blank check to the Human Services Department. Instead, they had targeted areas of support, a strategy, key areas that they saw that were worth investing in. Brown County is hiring a clinical professional, has created a grant for detox services. They're funding sober living for 12 new clients and hiring 2 opioid investigators. Sheboygan County is purchasing body scanners to prevent opioids from getting into the jail. They're hiring a corrections case manager and a youth substance use therapist. Fond du Lac County is hiring a peer recovery specialist and an opioid investigator. These are just some of the things that other counties are doing. I'm not suggesting that we copy the plans of other counties. I'm not suggesting we do any of these things. I am suggesting that we talk about it. Manitowoc County has unique challenges and unique opportunities. Our community already has many resources, organizations, and individuals who are working to mitigate the opioid crisis. We heard from many of them tonight. We should be looking to support this work. I don't see a task force as a threat to human services. I don't see it as a threat to the county budget. I see this as an opportunity to bring experts together to develop a strategy for these specific funds for what I would consider is one of the community's most pressing challenges. So I really appreciate all the people that came to speak tonight. I understand that we may not agree on this. I'm not looking, and I would not want this task force to be replacing any of the things that you are doing or telling you how you can and cannot spend money. You guys are all doing great work already. It's time that your county, local elected officials, step up to the plate and support the work that you are doing. And I would hope if this task force were to pass, that you would be involved in showing up to these meetings to tell us how best this money can be spent, much like you just did tonight. So that is why I make this motion. Supervisor Falkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And at this time, I'd like to make a motion to table Resolution 2024-2025-72, creating the Manitowoc County Task Force.
Okay.
I'm going to request some clarification. When you say table, tabling actually means to essentially take the matter, set it aside, and discuss it later in the meeting. That's different than postponing something indefinitely. That's also different than postponing something to a date certain.
I was wondering how the date or the time in which this could be approached again. I would like to have this not brought up again, so permanently tabled.
If that would be to postpone it
Postponing for indefinitely, sorry.
Does that require a second?
Yes, it does.
All right, I'd be looking for a second. Supervisor Benke. Is that discussionable? Yes, Supervisor Bry.
I guess I defer to our Corporation Council that I know what a motion to table, we're allowed at least one to speak. Every supervisor gets to speak at least once, correct? Because under normal Robert's Rules of Order, you can't speak to a table.
We're not tabling. This is a postponement.
Right, and I guess that's my question. Are we allowed to speak on
Yes.
this? Okay, thank you.
We'd be allowed to speak on the motion to table.
Correct.
Or on the motion to postpone indefinitely.
Okay, that's right.
We must have gone to the wrong Robert's Rules School or something. All right, so then there'd be discussion on the motion to postpone the resolution indefinitely. Would you like to speak to that motion, Supervisor Falkowski?
Thank you. Essentially, the heavy lifting was done by the individuals that were here making public comment. The concern, although it's a compelling narrative, but the concern is that this will in fact collide with other services and other practices that will interfere with, with substance abuse abatement. I know that the length of time that this settlement is supposed to last. For long-range planning, I think it is more effective to have it within our budgets process than it is to have a task force making recommendations for a period of, 18 years? The dynamics of the appropriation of departments' needs and circumstances and how that changes over a period of time is best suited with the long-range planning in our budget that exists with our county executive. So from that standpoint, I'm not obviously in favor of the resolution, but to postpone this for indefinitely, I think would be the best practice for this board without having deliberation of tense conversations. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Supervisor Bry, you are next.
I'm going to pass.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Ryan Phipps.
I think that we need this transparency. So like the last several years, nothing's run smooth. We've had several deficits, several missteps, we'll call them. And I think we need as much transparency as possible. And ultimately, I think protecting the individuals are the most important thing. And we should know where the money goes, when. We should have receipts for everything. As you can see, the example that we had from the lady here, like part of the task force also would protect the individual, because if we have missteps where we're not able to get any allocated funding, or if we do misfilings, like that could potentially really hurt the programs in the area. So like some of my big concerns are we doing everything that we can? Are we doing in the right steps or the right processes? And do we have as much transparency as possible for the individuals, for the programs, for the community? I just don't want to make any mistakes. Like, we have a big problem. We've known about the problems in our community for a long time, and we've made mistakes. Like, I think one of the judges said we should have had a task force 8 years ago. Well, yeah, we should have. I wasn't here. But we made mistakes back then, right? And like, we don't want to make mistakes going forward. And like this money is going to continue as we go forward. So I think some checks and balances, and I think working with the community, with the organizations we already have in place. But it's very concerning to me when I see the paperwork up on the screen that looks like a little kid filled the numbers in. Like, that's got to be concerning to you guys. I mean, you look at other examples, it's detailed, organized, and then we had shortfalls in our budgets. It's a lot, and maybe I don't understand it completely, and truthfully, I don't think most people do. But we need this to be successful for our community. We can't have mistakes. So I don't know if the task force is the perfect solution, but we need to ensure that we're protecting the citizens, we're protecting the community, and that we're protecting these organizations that are trying to help our community and our members. So I think to table this indefinitely would be a mistake. I think we need to keep the conversation going. I think we need more people's input, not less people's input. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Bry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't going to speak during this portion of it, but now we're going to start discussing essentially reason why we won't support the opioid or support the opioid task force. I guess it's time, but I don't want to turn this into a cliche festival, but hearing if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's very true here. We had Jason Laffa, and I apologize that I did not recognize you when you first came in, but I was chairman of the county board at the time when we created the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. With the cooperation, and Jason was our first person with drug court. He turned it and started into a very successful organization. It's worked great. And I guess I'm disappointed in the chairman when he feels that the money is being not appropriately or being disguised, not listening. That's what we're here for. I think as supervisors, we do listen. But if you want to listen to the most important thing that was said tonight, you listen to the three people that spoke that have been part of this program, and it's worked damn good for them. And not just them, for others as well. There are some failures, let's deny it. There's failures and everything. But the success rate in Manitowoc County is very effective. So I wasn't going to support placing this on file indefinitely, but I will support it because this needs to go away. We have an effective program. We still have the ability as local elected officials to ask those questions of the people that need to be answered from. So I will support the postponement. Thank you.
Supervisor Matthew Phipps.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only concerns were that we made sure that we had elected officials being held responsible for how this is being handled. So I would support that we would not table this indefinitely, because I think when we get into the discussion, if we do get to speak about this, just reading the central resolution is clearly just trying to make an equitable approach of having all voices heard and not having just the administrative state making all of the decisions, having the elected officials held accountable and responsible for making sure that that money is appropriated correctly. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Supervisor Zimmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, maybe we ought to task the task force, if we create it, and I hope we don't, with running the entire human services budget. It seems to me there's a communications problem between you and the county executive, and I don't think that the solution is to create a task force that will make these fiscal recommendations. We've already got, as the eminent jurists pointed out tonight, several organizations which are having great success in treating drug problems, and as Supervisor Bry said, the three people that came up tonight and talked about how successful they have been because of the help of the various organizations that address these issues indicates that we're doing the right thing. We don't need redundancy, and we certainly don't need the fiscal responsibility for accomplishing our budget in the hands of people other than the county executive. His job is to administer this county government and to husband the fiscal resources that the county has been given, and with, of course, the assistance of the finance chairman, and in this particular case, the chair of the Human Services Department. I have great respect for what the jurists said earlier. They're exactly where the rubber meets the road, and unless I'm mistaken, I infer from what they said that we are having considerable success, and we don't need another organization. It's redundant to begin with, and it should not be determining how we spend our money. That's something that the executive determines. All right? Not a task force. Thank you.
Supervisor Nato.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to commend everyone that spoke tonight. I know it took a lot of courage to come up here and tell your stories. But I'm just looking at, I guess, Chairman, could you tell me what would this task force cost to the county?
The time of the volunteers who would serve on it.
So there's potentially no cost to the county for this?
Right. I think one of the misconceptions is that this is taking money that is already allocated. There is no allocation for the 2026 budget for how any opioid settlement dollars would be used. The proposal in 2026 could be no dollars of the opioid settlement the opioid settlement being given to Human Services. We could change direction and appropriate it to the Sheriff's Department. So I think when I look at this, nothing would be taken from Human Services or Metro Drug. Remember, there's a $100,000 allocation there. But this money isn't going to pay anybody on a task force or pay for services that a task force would provide. The task force would be advisory to us, the county supervisors, and to the county executives.
So any advisement from the task force would have to go through the county board?
Absolutely. They would not be able to direct or spend funds.
So the task force could potentially make things work better, could find better ideas, not necessarily changing things, but could make it better. That's the goal of the task force, correct?
The goal is to have better communication between community partners, county departments, and this county board. So would it be able to make it better? Yes, that is absolutely my goal.
The one thing that bothers me is seeing how the state forms were filled out for our county compared to Milwaukee County, the example we were shown. That bothers me a little bit. And so I am not going to vote to indefinitely postpone this motion. So
Thank you, Supervisor Nato. Supervisor Metzger.
I'm not going to table this either, vote for that. I am the chair for the health department, and I know that they would not offer anything, they would ask anything if they needed anything. And I know that for the Narcan machine, Colleen was actually fighting it, which was supposed to be to help them, and I think it's better if they fully understand the stuff. You know what I mean? And for us not to be able to see receipts, I think is wrong. I think that when we're in charge of the budget, we're in charge of the spending, and if we can't see that, there's a problem. And we were $6 million short, which created the 0.5 sales tax. So I believe we should know what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Niles, you did have a request to speak? No? All right, any other discussion on the motion to postpone indefinitely? Supervisor Benke.
Mr. Chair, I've heard a couple think over the last months, we've pulled an accounting error into the whole discussion of what's and pretty much beating up on human services because of basically it was a $2.5 million accounting error. And I think we're pulling that into this emotional issue with this task force. And I think that's where a lot of this is coming from. And I do have to agree with the county executive when he says that if this settlement money moves out of the human service area into a different area, levy dollar, the services that human services is providing already, according to Lori Fury, there are things that human services is doing presently for opioid programming that they are doing, and a number of these people spoke to that tonight. You shift that money somewhere else, we're going to have to come up with that levy dollar somewhere else. Or that levy dollar still has to be replaced for the services that we're providing in human services. So I didn't support the task force the first time it was brought up. I only supported bringing it to this body because I've always felt that every person that represents the 3,500 or so people in their district should have an opportunity to speak on the matter. I don't support the task force. I support the fact with the motion to postpone indefinitely. We have enough layers of government. We have enough. And let's be honest, how many of us, and me included, how many human services meetings have I attended? I haven't attended a human service meeting in a long time. Now that I'm retired, I'm going to try to get to some more human service meetings. But it's still on us to do some of the work as well. We need to get more involved with some of what's going on. Human Services does an education portion to their meeting every month, from what I've been told. So we need to get educated. Transparency, that's an overused word sometimes. You want to get involved. You want to know where the money is being spent. You have an obligation as a county board supervisor to go ask the questions if you don't know those answers. So that's my perspective, Mr. Chair. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Supervisor Benke. Any other discussion on the motion to postpone indefinitely? All right, no other discussion. Seeing none, the clerk will conduct the vote, but I just want to, since this isn't a motion that we typically have here at the county board, so the motion is to postpone indefinitely. If you vote yes, it would end discussion on the resolution and postpone it indefinitely. Functionally is a vote to end the resolution. If you vote no on the motion to postpone indefinitely, the resolution would still be on the floor for discussion and potential passage. Is everybody clear on the motion and what a yes vote means, what a no vote means? All right, great. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the motion to postpone indefinitely Resolution 72, creating Manitowoc County Opioid Task Force.
All right, the motion to postpone indefinitely passes 11-10, which means there will be no vote on the resolution tonight or in the future. Okay, then Expo Ice Center Board Supervisor. Should we take like a? Okay. I'd be looking for, yeah, we'll just take a minute break. Luke, are you ready for me? Can you hear me?
Okay, now Supervisor Banky, turn his mic on.
Oh, hello. All right.
Okay. Okay, now that we have our nice, echoey, empty county board chamber, let's continue our meeting. Supervisor Banky, I would love to know what's going on the Expo Ice Center board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met February 5th. Just giving a little highlights of the Finance Subcommittee. We talked about the fairest of the fair, giving a clothing allowance that was approved. Takes a lot of money to look good for these girls that go to all these parades and stuff. So, Operations Subcommittee, we talked about solar panel stop signs. We're going to be addressing the Merchants Gate parking this coming Thursday night. We have a meeting with just the safety, and we put signs up there last year. We're going to use ARPA money to pay for those signs or solar stop signs just to kind of make that entrance more safe. Entertainment and subcommittees, we approved a whole lot of different vendors, from the pony ride vendor to the person that's going to bring a kangaroo, and just a whole bunch of new stuff going on this year. Marketing and advertising, talked about Women's Day events. We talked about the manure hauling. There's a lot of manure that goes off the property during the fair, and that vendor, it's not cheap hauling all of that manure off the property. So a lot of those discussions are being taken care of. The mentoring program, we have a few new members to the Expo board, that we have a mentor program, that we have a couple people working with them, getting them used to what's going on in the Expo board. Our next meeting is March 5th. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Banky. Next, we have Finance Committee. Supervisor Bride, do you have a report?
Just quickly, Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee did not meet this past month. The next scheduled Finance Committee meeting will be Monday, March 10th, 4:30 p.m. at the Administration Building on South 9th Street. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Highway Committee, Supervisor... Who's Chair of Highway? Why am I having... Banky.
February 11th is when we met. We talked about the results from the Traffic and Safety Committee on the Village of Connellersville on the intersection of K and T. Went back to their recommendation. A lot of history with that. There's two-way stop signs there. Some people want four-way stop signs there. It keeps coming back like a bad dream. We had an airport report from Leon Sigmund, an old gentleman that acts like he's 30, and gave a report on some of the things that are some of their requests for the airport. We got an equipment update from Commissioner Grodiget. We are having a few trucks that are out of commission for parts. Very difficult to get parts for some of these vehicles, and so that is a challenge that they're trying to work through, and especially with this winter weather, having a couple trucks down doesn't help us out. So that is a problem moving down. We had an Integrity Engineering firm is going to be designing the Bryan building, and just a heads up that our reporting system, where we report all of our time on the road, everything gets charged. Some gets charged to the state, and some we get charged for. And all of those hours of when the wheels turn, who gets charged for that? The system that we use doesn't necessarily collaborate with the system that we have in place. There's a lot of manual labor that goes into it, a lot of errors that can occur because of those things that we're having to record. So sometime down the line, eventually when we start looking at a software program for the county, that subject matter may come up. Our next meeting is March 11th. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Banky. Human Services Board, Supervisor Bry.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. We did meet several weeks ago. Most of the discussion that we had at the Human Services Board came from public comment that we heard tonight, so I guess I wouldn't want to repeat that. But the next scheduled Human Services Board meeting will be Thursday, February 27th, 4:15 p.m. at the Human Services Department Boardroom off of J Street in downtown Manitowoc. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Land Conservation Committee and UW Extension Education Agriculture Committee, Supervisor Ryan Phipps.
Thank you, Chairman Martell. As most of you guys know, we had a little presentation last county board meeting from UW Extension, which I thought went well. Those ladies are hard at work there. We do have a meeting coming up this Thursday at 4:45, so feel free to attend, and that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Personnel, Supervisor Marsh.
Thank you. We met right before this meeting. Just a short synopsis of, we did a reclassification of the current program specialists in the Human Services Department. We got an update regarding the WPPA negotiations. Went over the year recruitment. We had a good report about 2024 recruitment separation summary. Also touched on our Health Joy employee assistance program, and also on the recruitment in the Sheriff's Department. When you see how many patrol officers or people in the Sheriff's Department have retired, we actually were on top of that, and everything is looking very good. Not like years ago when we were like scrambling. So we have stayed on top of that. And our next meeting is April 1st, and that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Planning and Park Commission, Supervisor Falkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As an announcement, our next meeting is February 24th. The advisory hearings are at 3:30, and the hearing starts at 4. And I'll go right into public safety, if you don't mind. The Public Safety Committee met on February 12th. There was no questions from the committee members about the monthly reports. There was also no public comment registered that day. Family Court Commissioner Luke Lafleur gave a report regarding the function and the roles and the duties of the court. There is a cooperative agreement with the state that covers 60 to 70% of the office. Sometimes family court becomes volatile, and security is a concern. Family court cases can get emotionally charged and heated. There are sometimes requests for securities made by litigants. During injunction hearings, there have been threats cast. Court officials have been threatened, several directly to Commissioner Lafleur. The third bailiff between the two courtrooms has been a safeguard in these volatile situations. We moved on to the next item, which is the closed session, which was pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Section 1, Part G, for the purpose of conferring with the legal counsel for the county. We later reconvened into open session without taking any action. Our next meeting will be March 12th with discussion of our circuit court jurists. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is the end of the report.
Thank you. Public Works Committee, Supervisor Sikwitz.
Mr. Chairman, the Public Works Committee met on February 12th. The meeting began with the annual report from the UWGB Manitowoc campus and a brief background note for the newer members of the county board. The county built and owns the UWGB Manitowoc campus, and the Public Works Department is responsible for all construction, capital projects, and capital equipment replacements on the campus. UWGB manages the building and pays for all operational expenses. The UWGB Chancellor's Chief of Staff, Susan Grant Robinson, and the Manitowoc Campus Building and Event Manager, Wendy Holzbach, attended the meeting and gave the annual report where they touched on enrollment numbers and campus initiatives. They also spoke about their concerted efforts for community outreach, where they are bringing outside groups to the campus to make use of the facility, especially the theater and the gymnasium. In the Solid Waste and Recycling Division, the committee was updated on the state of the current markets for recyclables and the revenues received to date for them. We also took an in-depth look at how 2024's numbers compared with prior year's numbers. In the Buildings and Grounds Division, we discussed how the Public Works Department works with focus on energy-saving projects every year, and that the county received a $2,600 rebate check from Focus for last year's projects. We were updated on the status of the 2025 capital projects that have started and are underway, with one of those projects being the completion of the Heritage Center's elevator controls modernization, which allowed us to meet back in the county boardroom tonight. We received a report and the latest construction schedule for the courthouse windows replacement and HVAC system upgrade project. Construction and remodeling in the Branch 1 courtroom and support office is nearing completion, with new windows and HVAC equipment installed in this area. The next area to be undertaken is the Branch 3 courtroom and support offices, and we approved several pay requests, one from Hammond Construction for the courthouse project and one from Eland Electric for the Law Enforcement Center's fire alarm system replacement project. In the Communications Division, we were updated on the status of the 2025 capital projects for the public safety radio system, as well as activities and the communications team is working on to upgrade the AV and data systems in the courthouse as part of the current remodeling project. In the IT Division, we were updated on the status of active projects and the latest cybersecurity reports, as well as the monthly tickets for the IT service. In the Expo Division, we review the February calendar events, the planned capital projects for 2025, and the monthly financial reports. The next meeting of the Public Works Committee will be held on Wednesday, March 12th, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. And then for the Transportation Coordinating Committee, neither Supervisor Hacker or Granbaugh are present, so you will have to tune in next month to hear if we finally have that bus. Announcements. I just want to let everybody know that the next meeting is going to be on March 18th. Still finalizing the details, but watch out for a committee of the whole meeting prior to that meeting at 5 o'clock, where Human Services Director Lori Fury will be presenting and educating the county board on CCS services within the county. I just want to thank everybody for a respectful conversation about the Opioid Task Force. I know sometimes it can get a little exciting, especially when we have so many members of the public here. We're not used to this kind of attention, so thank you everybody for your consideration on that, and thank you Supervisor Benke for on the executive committee letting this come to the county board so that way we could all discuss it. So I appreciate that. With that, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Falkowski, second by Supervisor Marish. We're adjourned. All right, count those votes.
Heck yeah.
I said, all right, go count those votes.